And we are back. Welcome back to the show. Thank you all for your patience. For those of you listening later in the week and wondering what that was, well, that was a quick about hour-long recess that we took, a little halftime intermission on this episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live because Mike Kafka and Joe Shane each went to the podium and had their Monday media availability here. So we've got more to dissect here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Paul Dottino, Madeline Burke, back in the chair. Dodds, first we saw Kafka to the podium, talked about, his effusive praise for the organization, his gratitude for the opportunity to serve as the interim head coach, confirming he will have an interview for the full-time position, but out of respect for the process, saying, you know what, I'm going to keep the rest of the conversations and the details about that process close to the vest, as they've spent the morning from essentially 8 a.m. to about 1 p.m. in team meetings, individual meetings, and position group meetings with each of the players, and then followed by Joe Shane, who went through myriad of questions and topics discussing what the team is going to be looking for in their next head coach and what his beliefs are of this young core. But let's start with your takeaways from this, Dots.
Well, I think the biggest takeaway actually comes from Joe Shane, because we've talked to Mike Kafka a lot over the last week or so, and a lot of the questions have been a little bit forecasting and reaching a little further. So we kind of know what he believes, what his core philosophies are, how much he loves this job, honors this job, wants to keep the job. And we also understand exactly what his coaching style is all about. So there's not a lot of inquiries there as far as we're concerned in terms of what we're trying to figure out. But I do think that Joe Shane said a couple of things that are very important to understand about the framework and how this thing is actually going to go down. He said since Brian Daboll was let go, he and the ownership have constantly had communication about what was going to go on, and that he had already started to compile the list of potential head coaching candidates. He said very clearly there were no restrictions. They would look at college head coaches. They would look at NFL offensive and defensive coordinators. They are not going to limit this net.
Which is similar to what we were talking about before our brief intermission here,
well,
that it doesn't have to be an offensive or defensive side. It has to be somebody that can provide the right characteristics of leadership, and developing Jackson was a point of emphasis there.
Well, yeah, in fact, we can go right to that point if you want. I listed, when I was taking down my Twitter notes, specifically he listed the actual things that he wants in a coach. He said here, let's see, I got to find
developing
it now.
Jackson,
yeah,
leadership, and communication were the 3 points that he made.
Yeah, there was something else in there too. I can't find it right now. I'll find it later on. But here was the point. He said he and his staff have been going through the candidates and doing the research and compiling the list. He just got done with exit interviews. After he was done with us, he was going upstairs to team ownership, and they were going to map out the plan for the interviews, and they're starting this week.
Yes.
So that's what we know. We also know that once the interviews take place, the owners will be part of the interview process. He made that very clear.
Yes.
He also made it clear that ownership will make the decision, but that he said it will be a collaborative effort. So I think you understand the way it's been with the Giants over the last several head coaches. Ownership did make the final call, but they did involve everybody in the room. So that hasn't changed. Much different than the days when George Young was here, and George Young made that call by himself as the GM, and ownership had nothing to do with that. Mm. The Giants, over the last how many coaches now, have done it this way. They will continue to do it this way. Also, it was made very clear by Joe Shane he was not going to discuss anything regarding his contract status, because he was asked, are you getting an extension? Because a lot of people are thinking, well, if he's got 1 year left on his deal, he's going to be a lame duck. He said, I'm not discussing any of that.
He said he prefers not to discuss his contract and keep it private.
And you know what? It's his right to do that, and I agree with him.
Yep, and that news will eventually find its way public. But until then, for now, yeah, that's the status of it.
Now, they have told all the coaches on the staff that on an individual basis, if any of these guys want to go out and accept a job somewhere else, he said he'll talk to them on an individual basis. He didn't rule out that he would block anybody, and he didn't rule out that he would let them go. He said, we'll talk to each one on an individual case and then figure out what we're going to do. He said we got a lot of good coaches on this staff, and he thinks, some of them could stay, but then again, you just never know.
Yeah. Now, Joe Schoen also talked about how, acknowledging, he said, my first couple of years, I made some mistakes. Fortunately, we have great ownership here where you're allowed to stub your toe and you're allowed to course correct. He opened his media availability with gratitude to John Mara and Steve Tisch and the ownership and the organization for giving him an opportunity to see this thing through. And also pointed out one of the things that he learned along the way was, hey, you know what? You don't draft play because, he was asked, hey, you had one head coach in here. You're building a roster based upon what this coach, the ingredients that coach is asking for. Now somebody else comes in. How do you approach the draft and free agency with that in mind? And he said, one of the things I learned along the way in this tenure as his first time GM, when you draft players or you sign players, you want them to be versatile schematically because as we've seen today, Joe Schoen says, coaches come and go. Those are important elements that he's going to be looking at as they build their draft board and look at free agency and look at, who is staying and going on this roster as they are also deciding the direction that this team is going to be going with their next head coach.
Yeah, the full list of what he wants the next head coach to have: leadership, football acumen, player development, a plan for the quarterback, holding people accountable, and communication. Yeah. That's the full list.
Yeah.
Those are the qualities that he specifically mentioned for the next head coach. And again, he insisted that Mike Kafka did a great job with this offense. I mean, pulled them from, the bottom to quite a high level in a number of statistical categories. And look, we know that's why Mike was brought here in the first place.
And, Mike also giving a lot of credit to the Giants' offensive line. I mean, we've seen for many years the offensive line is a point of emphasis to improve upon for this team. And Kafka saying really proud of our offensive line. Every single week they were going up against elite pass rushers and really stepped up. Whenever you have an offensive line that can play like that, you're going to have a lot of production on offense, giving credit to Carmen Brasillo and that group for what they were able to do. And, yesterday on Giants Postgame Live, we, talked about how not just the starting offensive lineman, but the way that Carm and that unit has created an environment where they are interchangeable, and the next man
Coach
up,
Ferencz,
and
assistant.
Coach Ferencz is assistant as well. They're interchangeable, and the next man up is able to step in and execute in that regard, especially considering a unit like an offensive line when you want those, five to be stable. And so a lot of credit being given to the offensive line in that group and the improvement and the strides that they've had and the impact on the offensive side of the ball.
He claims there's no shortage of folks who think this is an attractive position.
Back to Joe Schoen here, yeah.
Yes,
I was
Joe
quoting
Schoen.
Kafka.
I'm sorry.
Now you're talking to Joe Schoen again.
Yeah, and I think, this will be the last point that I would raise. And again, we'll take your calls, 201-939-4513. As you said earlier about admitted the Jones thing didn't work out because that was the plan to build around Daniel Jones originally. Then he said here, they've figured out right now, they have key pieces at core positions on reasonable contracts. Those would be veterans, people like Andrew Thomas he talked about, and Dexter Lawrence, who are, have been all-pro kind of players. And if you look at the market, they're actually got a nice reasonable number now, as opposed to, some of the other guys who are today, they're getting new deals. They're making huge bucks. So he pointed to that. He pointed to, obviously, the good young players, which we know have been drafted in the last 2 years, said we have some salary cap room, and we also have some draft capital. So he listed all of those things as also the fact that you're working for great owners, a great franchise with great tradition, and obviously a place where if you win, boy, it's great. So he doesn't feel like he's going to have much trouble at all in terms of the amount of people who want this job and good people who want this job because they see some prospects here.
He was also asked, too, about head coaching candidates who might be coming in and saying, well, how stable is the job considering a GM who, may or may not be on the last year of his contract? And Shane acknowledged, saying he recognized, with the situation we saw last year in Jacksonville, how sometimes that can come into play, but also underscoring how much confidence he has in the calls that he's received, how attractive this job is to those aspiring candidates. And underlined as well that the number one point that he's been getting is that coaches are excited to coach here because of Jackson Dart. Coaches are excited to come here because of the opportunity to coach a young, dynamic quarterback in Jackson Dart. And that right there is going to underscore, too, because I know, you see a lot of chatter about what if a coach comes in and wants to take things a different direction or what's what. I don't see the Giants pursuing a coach that would do that. But that being said as well, there is a lot of interest around this opening because of the quarterback.
I like the offshoot question. I forget, might have been Paul Schwartz of the New York Post who asked about, well, if that's such a big selling point, are you giving Dart some input in the decision? And Joe kind of chuckled. He's like, he's 22 years old.
Yeah.
Okay? We have a front office.
Not
okay?
Yet.
He said maybe he might meet a candidate or two. But I think that's about the extent of the influence that Jackson will have personally on the head coaching decision. But there is no question that his component is a big feature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, reminder, 201-939-4513 is the phone number here. I know we took a brief time out here and have thrown off the timing of the day, but if you've got calls, we've got time. Dots, of course, they're going to be starting the interviews this week for potential head coaching candidates. In-person interviews, my understanding is they cannot start until the 19th.
Correct.
So it will be mid to late January before we see who the next head coach will be.
Yeah, they've got to do video calls right now.
Yes.
They don't have a choice. And obviously you understand, folks, there are rules in terms of guys who are currently under contract to other teams that have playoff games to come.
Yeah,
there's
also
small windows where you can
and this evens the
execute
playing
those deals.
field for potential candidates who may be coaching into the postseason who don't want to be, behind on the process because of that. So, yeah.
So, Joe did not, let me make something clear, while he did give us some sense of timetable in terms of how things are proceeding right now, he did not set a schedule for when they need to have somebody in place.
Yeah.
He did not even touch anything along those lines at all. So,
No.
quite frankly, I know, folks, you may not want to be patient, but I truly have no idea how long this is going to take. And again, let me make something clear that we said in the first part of our program. Okay, and if you're looking on the archive, you'll understand why we're two parts today. I do favor personally, this is not a front office or a Giants organization opinion. I personally happen to favor a guy who has been a head coach before in this league and has won some games.
Yeah.
But when Joe said that the net is wide and they will consider college head coaches and they will consider offensive and defensive coordinators, hey, that doesn't mean that's what they're going to get. It doesn't mean that's their primary group of guys that they're looking at.
It means they're being open-minded in the process.
He's being very open-minded
Right.
about it. So let me make that very clear, folks. I've been asked for my opinion, and I'm telling you personally what I would like, and I'm very happy to tell you my personal opinion. But I am not speaking for the organization. Make it clear. They are looking virtually everywhere. They're leaving no stone unturned here.
Yeah, and that's the need right there is you want to be looking and you want to keep your options open, keep an open mind, and there's an understanding of, yes, maybe there's a preference, much like you have, of saying somebody who has prior head coaching experience, but maybe you're dazzled by somebody who comes in and doesn't quite have that, but has a perspective that can help the organization in a positive way. Let's go to the phone lines. We've got James in Georgia calling in. James, welcome to the show. You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Paul and Madeline.
Hey, what's going on?
Hi, how are you?
Adam. I didn't know y'all was going to be on right now. I was actually on my way to work. A lot of times I, got to write my stuff down to get my point across. I actually did call about, the coaching carousel and to make a couple of points. I like how Raheem Morris is now available. I would like him as my DC, the defensive coordinator. There's a couple of things I was calling about, just like how the team building, and I know some people are probably going to call on, why they keep Shane when, this could end up being a maybe 1 to 2 year spot, depending on how the Giants do. I think they like the people that Shane has brought in. They just need a coach that can coach the guys up. I think the fact that we had leads in a lot of the games, if I can gather myself, the fact that we had leads in a lot of the games and we just couldn't close the games out is what probably gave ownership optimism in Shane's roster, that the pieces were there, especially on offense, to put together 21-point games and things of that nature. I know I've called before and made the point of, why can't we go from, what was it, like 15 points per game to maybe 21 or so, 3 touchdowns per game. I don't know if y'all have those numbers right now on,
not from your call, but they went up to 22 a game. I mean, they jumped nearly a touchdown a game, which was really terrific.
And then when I called in the offseason or early in the season, I'm like, why can't we expect that, 1 touchdown per game isn't a whole lot to ask for, but when, we've had the offense, the struggling offense that we've had, I can see where, there was optimism and, y'all will always say you're asking for a lot, James, but we said, what did you say, we're at 22 points per game?
Yeah, 22. I think
you remember there was a stretch for like 3-4 years where the Giants couldn't hit that 20 mark.
Well, this year, the Giants, the number I have, I did a little research on this. The Giants this year hit the 24-point plateau 7 times this season, 24 points or more. The last time they had that many, they had 8 in 2018. Okay? So that gives you a real indication of how long it's been since the Giants have been able to several times ring that bell. I mean, I give this offensive line, in all honesty, the bulk of the credit for that. I really do.
I'll make one more point and then I'll let y'all go. People, media, fans, they'll say, Shane, he let so much talent walk out the door, and Barkley, Love, McKinney, and Cat. And I counter them with, we had to fix the offensive line. Joe Shane has effectively done that. Whether the coaching has gotten the best out of this team, no, we still have a bad record. But he has fixed the offensive line. And we couldn't pay Barkley and fix the offensive line. We couldn't keep McKinney and fix the run defense or fix the pass rush, because we had Cat and Dexter Lawrence, and we were better run-stopping team-ish, but we were getting no sacks. We were getting no pressure on the quarterback. Now we're getting pressure on the quarterback. We're fixing that position, but now we couldn't stop the run. So it's hard to put, when you're building a team, you got to pick from here, you got to rob Peter to pay Paul, whatever analogy you want to use. And I love Dexter Lawrence, and a lot of people will call and say you can't get rid of the best players on your team, but also you can't have 1 or 2 players eating at the cap. You have to be able to spread out your position.
No doubt.
Along, the front, the linebackers, and the back end,
James, thanks for the call.
Thanks so much for the call. I mean, it's kind of like when you're remodeling your kitchen on a budget, right? Sometimes you want to go in there and just sweep it all out and put it all back in. But not everyone can do that. So, okay, this month we're going to replace the refrigerator. Next month we'll replace the stove.
Do we really need a sink?
Yeah, maybe the sink's leaking, but, we'll get to that in the budget next year. One thing at a time. And it's, maybe the biggest problem changes, but eventually you got a whole new kitchen. And you're looking at it, and it's coming together.
Just a draft note for a moment. The Giants will pick 5th. We obviously know that. Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss is actually live right now on ESPN. He's saying that he made the decision last night that he would come back for the potential 6th year with the Rebels. They have applied, he and the school, for the waiver, the redshirt waiver, to get that 6th year. They don't have it yet. It's not approved, but he's making it very clear that, again, with NILs, that's how come we're talking about deals with college players, right? He's making it clear that he has reached an agreement that he would come back with a 6th year of eligibility should the NCAA agree to it. Again, he said he reached that decision last night, just told that to ESPN.
Which is a big impact on draft boards and potential teams that will be
very exciting player.
Absolutely. And with the Giants holding the number 5 overall pick, obviously not targeting a quarterback, but teams that might be targeting a quarterback that might want to trade up, that changes the landscape of things as well. To answer some questions too, I see in the comment section, 11 Amani was asking if the presser's over. I didn't see any of it. Yes, the pressers are over. No, it was not live streamed. It will be put on Giants.com and the Giants YouTube later today once they get that cut and edited and put on the site. But they will have that up in its entirety shortly this afternoon, but it wasn't put up live. We just didn't have that turnaround today. And there was another question that I had seen in here, but you know what? I lost it. So we'll get back to that. But I digress. Anyways, 201-939-4513 is the phone number. Let's go back to the phone lines. Mike in Yonkers. Mike, how you doing? You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Paul and Madeline.
Yeah, hey, guys. I think I speak for every Giants fan. This is crazy that Joe Schoen gets another year. He got 9 wins with Dave Gettleman's roster, then had regressed every single year since. He's let a lot of talent walk out the door without replacing it unless he gets a top 5 pick because his team's so bad. I just can't believe that the once proud New York Giants is standing behind a guy who's won 13 games in 3 years. It's devastating. It's the sign of an old team that I used to root for every week being gone. And my message to Giants fans out there who are just stick with it, I guess. I don't know when we're going to turn it around. If this guy's drafting, probably not soon because he whiffs on everything unless it's the top 5 picks. I don't know. I'm just really disheartened. I feel like the standard of the New York Giants is not what it once was, and it's really a sad day for the Giants organization. I think it's a sad day, and he's going to scapegoat everyone else he can, but the quarterback wasn't his. That's all I need.
I understand your frustration. Thanks so much for the call, Mike. Appreciate you calling in. Listen, I don't know that it's fair to say he whiffs on everything that's not a top 5 pick. You got Cordell Flott coming in the 3rd round. You got Tyrone Tracy coming in the 5th round. You got Cam Scatteroo coming in the 4th round. You got a lot of late picks that have really made an impact on this roster. You got DJ Davidson, who's really coming in.
Well, Michael McFadden would have been a great example.
Darius Alexander.
Just remember one thing, and this was kind of a shoot-off of Bill Parcells when he got to the Patriots and then after a while fell out of disfavor, I should say, fell out of comfort with Robert Kraft, the owner, and then he said, you know what, if you're going to make me cook the food, I want to pick the groceries, right?
Yeah.
Well, the GM, the caller wanted to attach the record to the GM. Is it that fair to attach the record to the GM, or is that more on the coaching and the players?
I think it's a combination.
And that's the point. But he was strictly attaching it to the GM, and he wanted to lay the poor records at Joe's feet. And Ernie Accorsi.
I don't know if it's fair to assign meaning to that because it didn't feel like he was strictly attaching it and laying it fully at his feet, but I think he was associating that in his time that was the record.
Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Ernie Accorsi, who was legendary football guy. All right, we know from his time here as a GM, beloved GM of the Giants for many years. Ernie always used to say, my off season is where I've got to do all my work. Once the season starts, I go crazy because there's not much for me to do with the team. I have handed the roster to the coaches, and I've handed the players to those coaches, and now they've got to perform. They've got to make the game plans. They've got to make the plays. They've got to fight through the injuries. They've got to do it. And there's not that much more that the GM can do once he turns that sucker over to the coaches.
I think that's oversimplifying it, though, because it's not like they're like,
that's
hands
how
off,
he felt.
I'm done with it, here's your turn.
It's not
because
he's
throughout
done with
the
it.
season, Paul, as you know, an injury happens, right? A
But
player goes down.
it's
It's
tweaks.
the GM's job to say, okay, how can we manage that? How can we mitigate that?
Those are
here
tweaks,
is a player
Madeline. Those
who
are
is
tweaks.
available, who is doing well, who's on this practice squad that we should really capitalize on. The GM's job is constant throughout the season. It's not like they do all this work for the draft and free agency and then they're like, pencils down, we're done. No.
That is the way Ernie would mostly present the job, because he said, like, it's all about that. And I appreciate that, yes, there are transactions that have to be made every week. There are injuries. There are potential jiggling of the contract numbers.
And
It's not like the
evaluations.
GM sits up on his desk and kicks his feet up and does nothing from August to January. That's not true. That's not. In fact, what Joe does, he actually goes out to college games and he studies and he scouts and he talks to these guys. He's on the road every weekend.
But also is evaluating the talent on the roster to understand, okay, how much can we get? How much value is this player worth when this contract
That's
negotiation
why he's
does
got
come
staff.
up?
No,
Yeah.
it's not so much him. That's more his staff.
Yeah, but he's got a finger on the pulse.
He does.
You
He
have
does.
to in that position.
But Ernie's point
Yeah.
is that the bulk of his work is done during the offseason, and during the season it frustrated the heck out of him because he said that's the least control. My hands are in it the least during the season of any other months in the year. And you know what? I understood Ernie because I'm a Paisan. I get it. It was a stress level thing for him
yeah.
because he would be like, I can't do a whole lot during the season to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. We
Anyway.
got time for another call. One more to wrap it up here. 201-939-4513. We got Lorenzo in Orange County, New York, not to be confused with the OC in California. Lorenzo, welcome to the show. You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Paul and Madeline.
Hi, how are you, Paul and Madeline? Happy New Year.
You
Happy
too.
New Year, Lorenzo. Thanks for calling.
So I just called up to discuss basically the retention of Joe Shane. I'm going to speak basically, I can't speak for every Giants fan. I can only speak for myself. I've been a fan since 2005. I'm 31 years old. I have Giants jerseys, tiki, everything signed. I made a Giants channel. I just don't understand why you're retaining a GM who won 7 games in 2 years. I think he has had free agent whiffs as well. I mean, he attached his name to Daniel Jones when he signed him. Daniel Jones failed here. He got injured, went to Indianapolis. He prospered. That sometimes can be the system, which is completely understandable. If we're talking about the draft, I am going to have to agree with the last caller. Kayvon Thibodeau, top 5 pick. He's not playing like a top 5 pick. I believe he's playing average to above average, but not playing to that Pro Bowl level. Evan Neal, can't even see the field. Deontay Banks traded up for him, and I am going to agree with the last caller. I do not believe that Jackson Dart was truthfully his guy. So I'm not understanding a GM on now a 1-year contract who can not get signed or just get fired next year now has the power to select another head coach. My question is it because John Mayer is sick? We're all rooting for John Mayer here, but do you think, in your personal opinions, that he can't go out and do the work, select the GM that he wants because he is battling a sickness?
I think that it would be purely speculative for us to kind of, opine on that, but I do understand the point and I get where you're coming from. I think, there's a lot of layers to that, and it, partially too could be the fact that you look at a situation where the Giants have had a lot of turnover in the last decade of head coaches and general managers, and on some level you want to establish some semblance of continuity and letting someone see it through, and perhaps that's what this organization is doing right now. They're saying, all right, you know what, we agreed to a 5-year plan. Let's get this 5-year plan and see what we can get out of it? Doc?
The Giants had 11 draft
sorry,
picks
Paul.
in 2022, right? Mm-hmm. You following me? 11 draft picks in 2022. Evan Neal absolutely flamed out. It did not work out for a variety of reasons, none of which I believe were the general manager's fault, because he was universally regarded as a top 5 pick by every draft scout and draft nick that we heard from in that April's draft. So you can't blame him for that, because see, what I always do is when you want to go back and nail somebody for a quote high bust pick, you have to say, okay, was he drafting the guy as an outlier, right? Or did everybody, was it unanimous, that guy's going to be a top 5 pick? And that was the case with Evan Neal. He flamed out. But every team that would have taken him there, and they would have had a guy who flamed out. Otherwise, I'm looking at that draft, 11 picks, and the only guys who flamed out were Evan Neal, and in the 5th round, Marcus McKeithen, and in the 6th round, Darian Beavers, who blew out his knee. And his career ended because his knee never came back properly. Okay, that's 8 out of the 11 picks in that 2022 draft have either produced as a significant reserve or as a starter for this team. So I think you got to be really careful when you say he's missed a whole ton.
I just don't see it correlating into any meaningful wins, though. I mean, the past 2 years, we've had 4 wins in week 17 and 18, and I saw
all right.
saw that up.
Let me ask you, and I'm not being defensive or angry with you, but let me ask you this. Is that on him? Is the general manager responsible for a busted coverage, for lack of gaining takeaways or turnovers? Is a general manager responsible for that? Is he responsible for boneheaded mental mistakes in the secondary that give up a pass play to the Dallas Cowboys with seconds to go that allows Dallas's field goal kicker to hit a 64-yarder? Is that the general manager's fault?
No, that's absolutely not the general manager's fault.
That's where I'm going.
Listen, players need to play at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But it could be the scheme, it could be the coaching, could be
right.
a plethora of different things. It all comes,
exactly.
I'm understanding what you're saying.
And
it's
the players
who are
available, and the
I
players.
just think
yeah.
the GM is, he is the face right now of the New York Giants. Everybody wants to see what Joe Schoen is going to do next, and 90% of this fan base did not want to retain Joe Schoen because in fear that it would ward off other head coaching candidates. Like if a John Harbaugh gets fired today or tomorrow, is he going to want to attach his name to a Joe Schoen? And I think that's
nobody knows.
Scares season ticket holders and just Giants fans all around. Listen, I went to 2 games this year, one at the beginning of the year, one at the end of the year, and I do it every single year. I've been on the field. I've unfurled the flag. I talk to Giants YouTubers, not that means anything. They're not part of the organization, but at the beginning of the year, the stadium is full, and at the end of the year, the stadium's empty.
Yeah.
Valid.
Well, hey, I love the call because you sound sensible, and I appreciate the fact that you're trying to at least listen to some reason. The bottom line is you can have an opinion whether or not you like him, want to keep him, or don't, and we can have an opinion too. I'm not going to try to change your mind. I'm not. Let me make that clear. All I'm simply saying is this is my opinion, and this is why. You can have yours and why. I'm not going to change your mind, and you're not going to change my mind, and that's okay. That's a live and let live. We can agree to disagree.
And I think at this point, we're not really, I don't know about you, Paul, but I'm not in the point of having an opinion. I'm in a point of understanding this is the direction the organization is going. And so, all right, this is where we're going. Let's get on board.
And actually, that's the bottom line, because that's what they're doing. This freight train is pulling out of the station, and this is the track that they're going on. So you can either hop on and try to enjoy the ride and see which way they're going, or you could say, you know what, I just can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah, because
you got to figure it out.
Whether or not you think that Joe Schoen is the best option as general manager, he is the Giants general manager. And I think the best thing that, we could do for the organization is to support and encourage that to go well.
Oh, for sure. I agree with you both completely. And listen, I called. It's not to say that we are devoid of talent. I do believe this team is young. I do believe we have a young core. I do believe it's an attractive destination for a head coach. I just, I want so badly, to sit down every Sunday, to go to games and cheer on a team, right now, next week, going into the playoffs, rather than the season be over in October. But listen, I don't want to take too much of your time. Thank you guys so much.
I hear you, Lorenzo. Thanks for the great call, and I agree. I think it's so. I would much rather, recap a win every week on Giants post game live.
Trust me, we're on board with that, Lorenzo. I've been to 5 Super Bowls with this franchise. You think I don't want to go back to a 6th?
I don't know. You think Dottino is stressed in a losing season? You should see him in a winning one.
Holy moly!
This man, I don't know. I don't know. All right. Well, that's all the time that we've got today for today's show. Thank you so much all for tuning in and for listening and for your patience in our 2-part episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live, which will be merged together in one part for the podcast streaming networks, because with the magic of editing and television and all that kind of stuff. But, we started the show at 12:30. We're finishing just about 2:40. And interrupted by a nice little presser from Mike Kafka and Joe Shane, which you'll be able to see in full on the Giants YouTube page as well as Giants.com. That's right for me for this season on Big Blue Kickoff Live. I know you guys are keeping it going in the off season. I'll be back during Combine and all that kind of stuff, but just want to say grateful to all the Giants fans for tuning in and watching all of our coverage throughout the year. And we've got a full week of Big Blue Kickoff Live, still programming, still as normal. Make sure to keep tuning in Monday through Friday, 12:30 to 1:30, to keep up to date with all the latest on the coaching search, the news that's continuing to evolve around the Giants and the NFL.
That's all.
That's all. All right. Well,
that's all.
That's all, folks. All right. On a Looney Tunes farewell for Paul Dottino, I'm Madeline Burke. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live, part of the Giants podcast platforms everywhere, and giants.com/podcast. From the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. That's a wrap on our Monday, January 5th show. See ya.